The Life of Prophet Muhammad for Children. Hegira. Selim and Zehra were with their grandparents in a beautiful room with 4 walls full of books. There are many books in the room. They would listen to the rest of the story in this beautiful room. While the grandmother and grandfather were sitting on the sofas, Selim and Zehra were sitting on the ground in front of the seats where they were sitting, leaning their heads on the knees of their grandfather and grandmother. This time, his grandfather started the story. Lastly, a large group of Muslims migrated to Abyssinia and started to live more comfortably. But the Muslims who remained in Mecca were still having difficulties, because the bad people of Mecca, who did not believe in God, did not leave them alone. Our Prophet and his friends never stopped talking about Islam. Our Prophet wanted to explain Islam in places other than Mecca. He went to a city called Taif with Hazrat Zaid. Hazrat is an expression used to show respect. The people there were relatives of the Prophet's mother, Amina Hanım. But when they heard what the Prophet said, they became very angry, because the Prophet was telling them that what their ancestors said and did was wrong. He was telling them to stop their bad behavior. When people heard this, they treated the Prophet badly. They drove him away from their city. Even after this incident, the Prophet did not become angry with them, because he was a very compassionate Prophet. He prayed for them. The children's eyes sparkled with hope. He continued to talk about his grandparents. There were people who came to visit the Kaaba every year from other cities. Our Prophet and his friends were explaining Islam to these people. Something beautiful happened that year. A few people from the city of Medina accepted to become Muslims and promised to come again a year later. This was a very beautiful thing, Selim interrupted. His grandfather continued with a smile. As they promised, Muslims from Medina came again a year later, but this time they were too numerous. This event is called the Aqaba Allegiance. That is, the contract. Our master and his companions were delighted, but something else happened to make them even more happy. The Muslims of Medina were inviting the Prophet and his other Muslim brothers who were suffering in Mecca to Medina. Our master and his companions accepted this offer. The children laughed. They were happy because they thought that Muslims would be comfortable now. Our master's friends were prepared. They had left Mecca and set out for Medina. They reached Medina and settled down. Later, the Prophet was also his friend. He set off secretly with Hazrat Abu Bakr. Hazrat Ali, on the other hand, stayed at the Prophet's house to distract the Meccans. After he left, the Meccans went to the house of the Prophet. Their aim was to prevent him, but there was no one in the house except Hazrat Ali. When the bad people of Mecca realized that the Prophet was gone, they immediately followed them. Are they caught or not? Zehra asked worriedly. No, the Prophet and his friend Hazrat Abu Bakr. They were hidden in a cave called Sèvres. As soon as they entered the cave, the spiders had woven their webs and the birds had made their nests. They also had eggs in their nests. So it looked as if no one had entered that cave in a long time. Then the bad guys entered the cave and returned without looking. Allah protected our Prophet and Hazrat Abu Bakr. The Prophet and his friend Hazrat Abu Bakr finally arrived in Medina. There they were received with great joy. Everyone was happy. The migration of Muslims living in Mecca and our Prophet to the city of Medina is called Hegira. A new era began in the history of Islam with the Prophet's migration from Mecca to Medina. Migration was not just to migrate from one city to another. It was also turning point for the spread of Islam. Now, Muslims have begun to live their faith more comfortably. When their grandfather's word was finished here, the children were very happy and stood up excitedly. The comfort of the Muslims made them very happy. They thought how good the Muslims of Medina were. They were very curious about what would happen next in the story.